Folks, welcome back to the Anchor Podcast. Today is a very, very exciting day for me. One of my favorite people ever, someone who CLT may not even exist without this special guest, Laura Berquist, founder of Mother of Divine Grace, a Catholic homeschooling organization. Laura, you've been a dear friend since the early days of CLT. We met in the summer of 2016. You were such an encouragement. Thank you for everything you have done to bless CLT, but thank you even more for what you've done for 30 years now for Mother Divine
Yeah,
Grace.
yeah. It's amazing. It
It's an
is
amazing story.
amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing
It
story.
is.
So I've heard part of the Mother Divine Grace story. I don't know that I have heard as much about up to Thomas Aquinas College. So you were a member of the first graduating class at Thomas Aquinas
I was.
College. We
Yeah,
have dear friends at TAC, John Daly, and so many others.
yeah.
But what was education like for you up to TAC? Were you public school, Catholic school? What was that like?
Wow. I was in Catholic schools from 1st grade through high school. Um, but they weren't very Catholic, Jeremy.
Okay.
And I'll just give you an example. It's amazing. In my senior theology class, I was told that the church was going to change its position on contraception, so we all shouldn't worry about that. And why was it going to change? Because it would have to, obviously. I was told, honestly, truly, I was told that fornication is okay as long as you love each other. This is in my Catholic school.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and I was told, and in some ways, so that's the most scandalous. This that I'm about to say was the actual worst. I was told that if you didn't feel like going to mass, if you weren't going to get anything out of it on going to mass on Sunday, then
Yeah.
you shouldn't go. Go walk through the field. That'd be better, right?
Uh-huh.
Like nobody said to me, you know what? God is the creator. You're the creature. You owe him worship. Doesn't matter how you feel about it.
Uh-huh.
This is something that you owe in justice, right? Someone had said that to me. I would have been like, oh, wow, that's an argument. I can think about that. But this stuff that I was getting, it was like, yeah. And I was no longer super interested in going to mass, as a matter of fact. And my dad, I mean, my parents were both firm about what was allowed, but my dad said to me, Laura, as long as you live in this house, you are going to mass. And so one Sunday I didn't get up in time and he took me to mass, said, you are going to mass. So I was kneeling there looking around the church, and I said to myself, these people don't think that's God. If they thought this was God, they would act differently. They don't think this is God. So, Jeremy, there are a lot of things I'd like to say about TAC. But one of the first things was when I got there, through God's gracious providence, I was kneeling down at Mass and I looked around at the consecration and I said, these people think that's God.
Wow. Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Right?
So Laura, how does this happen in going from a clearly not Orthodox Catholic K-12 school or Catholic high school to TAC? I mean, as I understand TAC, and of course, your late husband Mark was one of the founders of Thomas Aquinas College. But in some ways, as I understand, it was born out of kind of a thought experiment at St. Mary's College for like what
Yeah.
would an authentically, passionately,
Right.
faithfully Catholic
Right.
college look like?
Yeah, like, if we could do what we want to do, what would we do? And that's when they wrote the proposal for the fulfillment of Catholic liberal education, what we all call the Blue Book, and is
Mm.
available on the TAC website. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Um, but they wrote that and then kind of floated it around and, oh gosh, what was his name? This nice man gave them $10,000. It was their first donation, and he said, everyone should have a chance to fail.
Uh-huh.
So he gave them the $10,000, but they kept going. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was young, right? I was 17 years old, and I had read, well, in 69, my mom had actually read an article by Russell Kirk in
Okay.
National Review, and she thought it sounded super, and she handed it to me, and I read it, and even in my adolescent corruption, thought, yeah, that really does sound interesting. Reading the original works, having
Huh.
discussions. Yeah, that sounds, though there are 4 years of mathematics, I don't know about that, but yeah, this sounds kinda interesting. But that was '69, and so school wasn't yet in existence, and yeah, and those 4 years of math were a hurdle I had to overcome. So, so I signed up for, some so-called Catholic college in Minnesota where I lived. 71, I was out in California out here, uh, helping out one of my aunts and uncles, and my mom again saw that in National Review that they were actually gonna open this school in the fall of '71, and God bless her and my dad, they flew out to California and said to me, "So, would you like to go and take a look at this place?" And I thought, "Sure,
Yeah.
why not? Okay, let's go."
Was
So
it
we
in
went.
71, was it the current campus? Was it that location?
No, no, it was in Malibu, on Malibu Canyon Road, so
Okay.
yeah, Malibu and Mulholland, I think. And, so, it was the old Claretian
Okay, okay, and
seminary.
how many were part of this incoming freshman class?
There were 32 of us.
Okay,
32 of us started and 18 of us finished.
okay,
So
okay, yeah,
nearly a 50% attrition rate. And we were an eclectic group. Wonderful. It was
yeah,
wonderful. I love my classmates. But, you know, brand new, really at that point, very unusual curriculum. Hard, honestly. It was a difficult and unaccredited, not that, but yeah, so those 32 of us were an eclectic group.
yeah. Okay, okay. So 18, and by the way, Laura, I was on TAC campus. John Daly, he took me. We saw your graduation picture as part of
Yeah,
that first
first
class.
class, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
as well. I mean, it's come so far, and I think it's helped a lot of folks kind of reimagine what Catholic higher ed
Education,
can be. And
absolutely,
what's so amazing about
absolutely.
Thomas Aquinas College, I mean, anyone you meet who went to TAC, you talk to them for like a minute and you go, wow, this is a really thoughtful person.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
incredible. So take us from
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
take us from
Go ahead.
graduating to the founding of Mother of Divine Grace. How did this come about? I'd love to hear this story.
Yeah, so I have to take you back a little bit. When I met so I went with my parents to the campus, right? And we get out of the car, and these 2 really tall men come and meet us. It's Dr. Newmeyer and Dr. MacArthur. And, yeah, so we're wandering around, they're talking about the difficulties involved in founding a school, and I'm just kinda trailing and listening. And then all of a sudden, Dr. MacArthur turns to me and he says, "Well, Laura, what's the best part of you?" I'm like, "Whoa, I guess I got a test." And I said, "Well, my mind?" He said, "Good, good. And what's the best thing you can do with your mind?" And I said, "Think about God." And he said, "Very good." He slapped me on the back and he said, "Okay, okay. So are you going to come here and do the best thing that you can with the best part of yourself?" And I said, "I guess I am."
Wow. Wow. Love that.
But that was my introduction to classical education,
Yeah.
and it was really pretty good, right? I mean, so the best part of you, the thing that distinguishes you from all the rest of material creation is your mind, right? And to use that to think about the most noble, the most
Hmm.
excellent, the best thing you can is obviously the best use of that best part. So, years later, when I read St. Thomas's commentary on Boethius' De Trinitate, question 5, and he lays out there, what classical education is. And he just says, well, you have the liberal arts, right? The 7 liberal arts, the trivium and the quadrivium, and those prepare the mind to do the sciences, those things that have to do with what is universal and unchanging, because you can only really know about something that's unchanging, right? So you've got the physics and the dynamism and the ethics and the politics. And all of that, he says, is ordered to metaphysics, the beyond nature. But then St. Thomas says, all of that is for the sake of sacred theology, of
Hmm.
knowing the best, most excellent, most noble. So Dr. MacArthur didn't lay out, Boethius's the commentary on Boethius, but he really gave me the short and quick version of that. Once I saw that, and it's what I want to do with the rest of my life, right? I want to bring that particular good, which is a universal good, to everyone I know, and especially for my children, right?
Yeah.
My own children.
Mom of
So,
6, is that right, Laura?
yes, 3 boys, 3 girls, very even.
It's a good number.
Yes, a good number. Yeah, perfect number. Um, so as I was, we were having children, and I was thinking about education, and I knew I wanted them to be able to go to Thomas Aquinas College.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about what we would do, and my mom said we should homeschool. She said, Laura, she said, Laura, I spent my entire motherhood career working with the people who actually worked with you. I was fighting with them because they weren't giving you a Catholic education. They weren't in the intellectual tradition. She said, why don't you just actually teach your own children directly? You can make sure
Yeah.
that they get that education.
I mean, I love this because like this is still the 70s, right? I mean, how old your
Yes.
oldest?
Well, so my oldest was born in 76. And so
Yeah. I mean, so I know from the census,
40.
1973 is the first government report of homeschooling, and there's 13,000 nationwide total homeschoolers. It's illegal in most states. I mean, what was this like in late 1970s, as you're like,
Yeah.
we're going to homeschool? Was anybody doing this? What was that like?
There weren't very many people doing it, but the people who were doing it were the Protestants, honestly. The thing about the Catholics is they have Catholic schools. And so most Catholics still had their kids in Catholic schools. I went to several Protestant homeschool conferences that were super helpful. And I read things like Homeschooling for Excellence and Susan Schaefer Macaulay's For the Children's Sake, and Better Late Than Early. And then there was my mom saying, you really
Yeah.
ought to do this.
So
But I
you
told my
started
kids,
homeschooling
I kept my kids
yeah.
inside during the day.
Oh, because
Go out
yeah,
during the day.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, right.
So you started, I mean, homeschooling in the early 80s, but didn't really kind of formally create Mother Divine Grace until 1995. We're celebrating the 30 this year. Is that accurate?
You're right. That is right. Yeah. So for the first 10 years, what I was doing was experimenting on my guinea pigs, right? And
Uh-huh.
I like curriculum, so I was buying stuff and, but I did have this idea in my head that there was both a content and a methodology. I'd read Dorothy Sayers' The Lost Tools of Learning. She talks about the difference between what you do and how you do it.
Hmm.
And that really resonated with me. And I could see that. I mean, if we had a really long time, Jeremy, I would give you instances of where I could see. I was asking my kids to do things they couldn't do, but
Uh-huh.
then later they could do it. And then I would think about that. Why couldn't they answer that question 2 years ago, but now they're doing it spontaneously, And so I just, over time, over that 10-year period, I realized that, yeah, it's what you want them to learn, but you also, there's this how that's important. And so at the end of about 10 years of, thinking about this and talking to Mark and reading more Aristotle and St. Thomas, I was asked to speak at a conference. And I knew Mark would say no because we had to keep a low profile. And, so I said to my friend who asked me, I said, well, I'll ask Mark, but he's not going to go for that. So I went to him and said, so honey, Margaret Borsig Mason wants me to come and give a talk at a conference. So I know about homeschooling, but yeah, it's fine. I'm sure you don't want me to do that. He said, oh no, I think that's a good idea. So I went, and Margaret said, my friend said, please bring a handout. So I started with one page, right? I was going to do preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade through 12th grade, and just write things down. But it kept getting longer and longer. And so then I called Margaret up and said, can I do one page per grade level? Would that be okay? And she said, wow, Laura, that's a lot of paper, but yeah, I guess so. Go ahead. So then I was working on that. And Mark came home from school one night and said, honey, That's not a handout, that's a book. So then I
Yeah.
self-published the first little gray pamphlet of designing, and I took it to that conference, and I sold every copy. Every single copy I took. It just resonated with moms who wanted to homeschool their children and wanted to give them this kind of education that was clearly ordered from the beginning to the end, right? One of the
Yeah.
things that's
Wow.
different about MODG is that you start out, I mean, Jeremy, there's there's really something to be said for having subject matter experts do the different courses. And I'm not a subject matter expert, but having one person do the courses, then you get this unity, right? It's all order. I know what I want them to know in 12th grade. I know I want every kid, my kids, but all these others now too, to know the definition of law. I want them to be able to say, law is an ordinance of reason for the common good promulgated by him who has care of the community. Because I know I want them to do that, I can order things from kindergarten on that are going to be
Mm.
preparing them for that understanding, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about the measurable testing company. What's measurable? The fruit of a mother divine education. They love God. They love family. They love the church. They go to mass.
Yes.
Have
Yes.
you kind
Yep.
of ever tracked some of this over the years? I mean, I've met many Mother Divine Grace students and families, and
Right.
they're the ones I know are all very, very devout. But I think for folks that care about these and identify these as like the main things, we think test scores
Things.
matter, of
Right.
course, as well. But these are the
Yes.
main
Right.
things. These
They
are the
are.
these are
They're
the
the main
eternal
things.
things
That's,
that you've
yep.
been,
Absolutely.
yeah, that what you've
Right.
built has been incredibly fruitful in
Yeah.
accomplishing those ends.
Yep. Jeremy, we have never tracked that, but since you give me this opening, I was speaking at a conference this past weekend, right? And this lady stopped me and she said, Laura, I have to thank you because when my oldest child was in ninth grade, he was in the local Catholic school, local to where she was. And he came home from school and said he didn't believe he wasn't going to be Catholic. This was all hooey. And she's, God bless that woman. She took him out of school and she took her other kids out of school and she started homeschooling them.
Mm.
God bless her. And she said, so they were doing the MODG stuff. And, in addition to wanting every kid to know the definition of law, I want them all to know the motives of credibility. I want them to be able to make that argument for the truth of the Catholic faith. So this kid is taking our religion courses, and then, we have an integrated curriculum like TAC, so taking all the other classes. She said in his senior year, he did both Catholic doctrine and intro to philosophy, and in the middle of the year, he came home and he said to his parents, this is all true. This is all true.
That's amazing.
I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. You know what? It's worth it for that, right?
Wow.
The whole thing. So, yeah. Thank you,
Uh,
Jesus.
Laura, I've got to get in this story in this podcast. So,
Yeah.
summer of 2016, I'm going to the ICLE conference. I know you're speaking there. At this point, CLT is just a wild dream. Like we've got no money. We've got a crazy idea to try to challenge the college board. So I've got this mission of like, I just got to talk to Laura Berquist. That's it. I've got to talk to Laura Berquist. She's going to be here. And at ICLE, of course, they have these great wine and cheeses at the end of the day. And I'm in a line with 10 other people to shake your hand and talk to you. And we talk for a minute or two. And you've got other people to talk to. So I go my merry way. And then at like, you can't make this up, at like midnight, I have a sense
Yeah.
that I should move my car. I don't know why I thought I should move. It was on the other side of campus at Newman University in Philadelphia. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna move the car. And then I'm walking to my car and I see you. It's like midnight. And I'm like, is that
Yeah.
Laura Berkman? Am I seeing an apparition? Is this Laura Berkman?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, hey, we met earlier in the night and you were like, oh, I can't find my dorm. Now, anyone who knows me knows I'm not the person you want to find when you're lost. I've never helped a lost person before, ever. But we end up just chatting. I tell you kind of the whole thing, and I really can't thank you enough. I mean, you're this force, this academic, this spiritual leader, and you're communicating belief in this vision, and knowing that you believe that during what seemed like the impossible years when it was like we were just trying to will this thing
Yeah.
into existence. So I wanted to
Yeah.
include that. It felt so providential that it was
It was
it
providential.
was so providential.
Absolutely.
And
It was providential.
yeah,
Yeah.
so grateful for that. So Laura, I'd love for you to speak to some of our listeners here about curriculum, books, navigating a college decision. One of the questions, that we hear from both our homeschoolers and classical Christian school students, Catholic school students, is sometimes there's a sense going out of senior year, I've had
Mhm.
this kind of education. I want to experience big SEC football. I want to go to big
Yeah.
university.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you're in these conversations with moms and dads every day. How do you enter into that
Right.
conversation? What's your advice for parents navigating the college search?
Well, you know what? I always start with there are a bunch of things, but I always start with our children are the talents, right? Given to us by God, like in the gospel, to be returned to him with interest. Everything you do in this life, certainly every intellectual formation should be ordered to that, to return to God. Kids are not done when they're 18. And MODGs, I think a good program, and I think it's a good beginning, but it's only a beginning. What you need, what you want, like what we're made for is to have this education about the most important things from the people who have articulated that the most clearly. It just changed my life. So I get to TAC and we do the Platonic dialogues, and then we read the logic books of Aristotle, and then we do the physics and the Dionama and the ethics and the politics and the metaphysics of Aristotle. And we read freshman year all of scripture, and then large body of the work of St. Augustine in sophomore year, and then the Summa in junior and senior year. And alongside of all of that, we're doing the Enlightenment philosophers and the great works of I did those 4 years of mathematics that sounded so scary. The Euclid and the Ptolemy and the Newton and the Galileo and the Descartes. Now they're doing Einstein. Guess we did too a little bit. But it is so broadening. It is the education that we are meant to have as men. What's his name? The guy who, come on, Laura, Chemical History of a Candle. The guy who discovered the connection between magnetism and electricity. Anyway, he was commended for being a great scientist. And he said, no, I am a natural philosopher. I'm a natural philosopher. And I think that's really significant when we have, look, I told all 6 of my kids, you should start thinking now about what you're going to do after you graduate from Thomas Aquinas College. From the time they were 2, that's what they heard from me, because I know that this universal education where you are being educated in all of the disciplines, right? All as it were, all the parts, all the powers of your intellectual abilities, they're all being, there's a place, I think it's on Generation and Corruption, where Aristotle says to be an educated man, you have to know the principles of all the disciplines, enough to make good judgments. Okay, then you can specialize. If you specialize before you actually have those principles, then you're not going to understand the thing you're specializing in. That's why this guy said, I'm a natural philosopher, because though he was studying this kind of narrow branch of science, he saw it in its context, the context of the whole. And if you want to really understand that narrow branch, you have to have that context. So what I tell the moms and dads is, you want your kids to get a real education. You want it to be faithfully Catholic. You want it to, you want them to be able to say, oh, this stuff is true, like that kid did. This is true. You also want them to have the tools that they need to understand those specializations that they're going into, and they won't if they don't have this general universal education. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Laura,
Okay.
our mutual friend Mary Pat Donahue
Yes.
put it
Yes.
this way. I never heard anybody put it like this, but that
Yeah.
students graduated from a Catholic school who on an art test or something say they don't believe in the real presence. That just adding a really vibrant religion class won't solve the problem
That's right. That is
because
absolutely right.
they don't have the grounding from the metaphysics everywhere else. It's
Right.
random. It's disconnected. It
Right.
doesn't fit in with
Right.
the rest of. Can you
That's
speak into that?
beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's just exactly right. It's that, like Dr. MacArthur's saying, use the best part of yourself to understand the best thing. All of the disciplines feed into that. It's not just theology. In order for you to see that you are ordered to it, it's not ordered to you. You have to have the other disciplines. So that's why that kid said this is all true. It's all true
Oh.
because he sees objective reality mirrored, present in everything, right? In every discipline. Really like what Mary Pat said there. That because it's just true.
Yeah.
It won't work.
Yeah.
It won't
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
We always conclude Anchored Podcast talking about great books, and I'm wondering if there's one in particular that you kind of return to year after year, maybe that you reread that has spoken to your soul in a particularly profound way. And if you say anything from the Bible, you got to tell us about a book in the Bible as well.
Yeah, no. So, of course, the Bible is foundational. Look, there are a lot of things I like, but I was thinking about this, and I just in all honesty, I have to say the physics of Aristotle. That's just the fact. It's what I go back to.
Okay.
I read it and I reread it. I talk about it. Why? Because in the physics, you learn what principles are. That's what this is about, the principles of nature. You learn what nature is. Nature is the principle of motion and rest in the thing primarily per se and not accidentally. And you have to like unpack that. But do we live in a time when people need to know what a nature is? Yes, indeed we do. And then in the physics, that's where I learned about act and potency, where I learned what change is, the act of the imperfect as imperfect. That's where I learned about the four causes: matter, form, agent, and end. Every single day I think about what's the end. The end is, St. Aristotle says, the end is the cause of causes. It's the cause that brings the other causes into being. You have to know the end. It's the first in thought, though the last in being, right? Because you want the cake that you do all the stuff to get the cake, right? But you have to have that end in mind first. And that's in everything you do throughout your life. You have to see that I've got to have the end clearly in front of me in order to accomplish what I want to accomplish. And then you have to think about act and potency. What's potential here and what's needed to actualize it? I mean, it's very practical, really. And I think about it all the time.
Aristotle's physics, amazing. All right, and then I thought that was going to be the last question, but I do want to know there is this healthy debate within Catholic ed. I mean, I think we're all grateful that there's clearly a renaissance going on, and we're seeing this with a lot of brick and mortar schools doubling down on their identity. The continued rapid growth of Catholic homeschooling is amazing. A little bit of a debate though about the word classical within this movement. There's a bunch of schools that are I just went to St. Benedict's Classical School, beautiful school in Connecticut, doing wonderful work. Other folks that are at Catholic schools, they don't love the word though, and they want to maybe Catholic liberal arts or the educational patrimony of the church. Is the word classical helpful or not helpful? Can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's helpful. Sure helpful to me, because like that commentary on Boethius's De Trinitate, we owe so much to that classical vision of education, Aristotle's vision of education. And we, the church, have taken that. And we, through St. Thomas, owe so much to Aristotle, and it is a classical understanding of education. It I thought you were gonna say, some people think it's reading those books, and some people think that it's about, I don't know, the kinds of questions that you ask, I guess. Yeah, various people have various ideas about what they think classical means, and I think it's a formation.
Well,
So, you know,
yeah.
I don't read much Aristotle or St. Thomas with my kids, right? But I hope they will, and I'm preparing them to do it well. That's my goal.
But I do think something has changed, and even in the short time since CLT's been
Yeah.
around, I mean, when 2015, classical ed was not on the radar for most people.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it has emerged as like the alternative to kind of the
Yes,
failing
that's certainly
secular
true,
progressive.
Jeremy. That is just
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And I
but
think
different
folks
people have
processing
different
it in,
ideas about what that means.
and I think of it though as fundamentally about the teller, like this goal.
One of the things that I say to my consultants, the teachers, is, I mean, I have a broad view of what classical education is, and I do think it matters, the what and the how. I think there's formation goals. But I'm telling you something, if a school will teach kids to read well and guide them in that, so the kid says this is what it's saying and you say no, it's not what it's saying, let's unpack this, let's think about this some more. If we'll do that, and we will also teach them to answer the question that is asked, not start, stream of consciousness, you ask me this question, it makes me think of these things, but actually answer that question. We're doing an amazing job of educating those kids, because that's not what they're being taught elsewhere. They don't read well and they don't answer the question.
But again, we're here with Laura Berquist, founder of Mother Divine Grace, member, long-term member of our academic board at the Classic Learning Test. Laura, we are super indebted to you here at CLT. Just thank you for believing in what we're doing here. Thank you
I
for,
do.
I mean,
I do
you've
indeed.
had generational impact on thousands of lives.
Oh,
There are going to
thank
be
you.
different kinds of moms and dads because of the work you've done, and God has absolutely multiplied your efforts in an incredible, incredible way. So
Oh,
thank you, and keep going strong.
you too, Jeremy. God bless you.